scraping by. Imagine a world where every single coffee you purchase, every candy bar, when you make that transaction, a cut is taken out by the big banks who make billions of dollars. This is the world we've somehow stumbled into. Until now. Now, with blockchain, we actually have a chance to take back some of that ownership and some of that potential and actually make sure that we can own our own lives, our own money, our own wealth, our own value, back from the institutions, which grew up in a time when people could not manage that themselves. But with new software tools and blockchain, we now have the potential to actually deliver on it. So, we've got Purple Cow financial instruments. What do I mean by that exactly? So, I stole from Seth Godin, marketer. Purple Cow is something that cannot be missed, something that stands out, something that is totally different than everything else. So this is what blockchain is doing, and this is the value, which is that it's not an incremental improvement. It's not, oh, a better loan. Oh, we've got a better interest rate. This is actually something completely different. And because of that, it offers tremendous value that heretofore has not been seen. Now, all of these cryptocurrencies, virtually all, operate on the premise of, hey, there's a finite number of these. Because there's only a set number forever, like Bitcoin, when you trade them, they're going to retain value. However, I think this is a really silly way of transferring value because we have actually other precedents for things that were items where value is traded, but they're extremely volatile. Now, to give one example, Pokemon cards. Anyone who lived through the 90s remembers Pokemon cards as being one of those items. You've got the collectability, you have the uniqueness, but further, this is not a good store of value over the long term. They go up, they go down, people have their own emotions surrounding them. Similarly, you've got Pogs, again from the 90s, my childhood, but again, you've got a finite number of these, you can play games with them, you can trade them with your friends, but ultimately, they're not as stable as the US dollar. They don't have an intrinsic value system to them because the demand over time is not there. You also see tulip bulbs in the Dutch tulip mania. This is a historical example, but something very similar to what happened to Bitcoin briefly last December. Everyone wanted to purchase tulip bulbs so they could sell them tomorrow for more. This happened then. It happened with Bitcoin. You've seen other market bubbles, like the dot-com bubble in the 90s, the housing bubble in 2008. This is a historical pattern. This is based on human psychology. But to have a stable financial system, to have stable financial instruments over time, you need something better than these, or Beanie Babies, another collectible. What you need, truly, is a system that's going to encapsulate value and be able to transfer it. Many people are looking at blockchain and saying, well, let's make a token. Let's make a unique collectible asset. However, you want to be looking at it more as a network that facilitates value exchange. Whether that value is a collectible token or a real-world object or any other financial instrument. So the big banks are actually very afraid of this thing. Because every single time any one of you walks into a store, runs your credit card, the ECH, the electronic clearinghouse, that's how the finances are transferred bank to bank, bank account to bank account. This system basically dominates how financial transactions are done and how wealth and value are transferred between individuals. The fact that we now have a system independent of any central authority where you can transfer value is remarkably powerful. The fact that you have this and you can take it away from the banks. This is the same reason why any of you, if you go into a store and, hey, I want to buy that candy bar for $2, they say, oh, let's add a 50-cent charge on top of that to cover the ECH fee, 1 to 2%, that is going to be charged on that transaction. So, here are just a selection of the cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin, of course, is valued by its uniqueness, but that makes it subject to market fluctuations. But you can securitize anything to the blockchain. You can take any store of value in the real world and place it on there. So it's not on an Excel sheet, not at a bank, not in one of those systems. And that's really the power there. Because with Ethereum, for example, Ether, you've got gas. The coinage is backed, in a sense, by the ability to run software applications on the Ethereum network. So you're beginning to see some of these networks that are actually transferring other stores of value nearly beyond the collectability. One of those is the US dollar. Taking US dollars and securitizing them to the blockchain so that you can transfer them. That way you can actually do financial transactions with US currency or other currencies and not be relying on the ECH system or any other banking system. Corey is doing some amazing work in this field, and you'll be able to hear him talk later about stabling. But the ability to transfer that wealth, that value in between individuals is something very profound. Now, some of the applications for the dollar transfer, small merchants who have a lot of transactions, and each cut is going to take a large chunk of that. Now, in the short term, you've seen this adopted by people with less noble goals. People who, let's say, crystal meth, drugs, money laundering, other sorts of tools, because they had the most incentive. But the true power is actually giving people the resources and the ability to transfer. A resource is anything someone else wants. Anything that another person desires. And if you can take those and securitize them to the blockchain so that you have a trusted network, then you can trade any resource. Resources that have not yet been securitized or those that have been dominated by central players historically. So, okay, I guess we're here. So, one of those resources is water. Now this may sound a little odd, but even today in the Middle East, clean, potable drinking water, the prices of that fluctuates. And there are many experts who think that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that clean water is actually going to become a much more valuable resource in many of those locations. Now there's a dark future where water, the stuff that from which all life arises, that's going to be dominated by a few large central corporations. I think that is wrong. I think that we should own our water. If this becomes a valuable commodity, and this is something so intrinsic, so basic, so fundamental to our lives, this is something that we should own. So, moving forward, I think that this is something that can be securitized to the blockchain. This is something that we can store, transfer between each other, and not rely on any central authority. This is a store of value, clean water, and this is a decentralized, scalable way to manage that. Another one, student debt. We're at university, and yet so many people who come here graduate with fantastic amounts of student debt. They are shackled to their debt, and this impacts all of their decisions going forward. Where they work, what they're doing with their lives, everything about their decisions coming out of university. The tragedy in my mind is that many of these students sign on for student loans at a time when, well, everyone else is signing up for student loans, why don't I just do it too? And there's a covert acceptance. People don't read the interest rates, people don't do the math maybe as well as they might, and banks and financial institutions have no reasonable incentive, have no incentive at all to make this a friendly, a helpful, or a more transparent experience. They have an incentive to see people chained. But what if you could pay for college or for your other education with a resource that every one of you has? A resource that every one of you has enough of to pay for a college degree, that students particularly have enough of, and that has not been taken advantage of before. Something that would actually break those bonds and allow people to recapture their futures. Something that allows people, students, to have that power. To be the breaker of chains. So what I'm talking about here is future income. This is the particular project I am working on and my company is working on. This is allowing people to take shares of their future income and sell those on the blockchain. In this way, people have access to real value. Not a token, not a beanie baby, not a collectible. It's a real future cash flow of some individual. One case study, one example might be just 10% of your future income for a 5-year chunk of time, and then selling those shares. You can raise money for your education. You know exactly for what period of time